Let's get rolling on a Wednesday. Glasses in session, and we check in with Jenni Carlson, who joins us. Give Jenni a follow on X at Jenni Carlson _OK, sports columnist at the Oklahoman.com. And Jenni, as you know, it is a big year for Brent Venables and company. I mean, every list you look at, he's amongst the top on being the hot seat, needs a good season. As we enter the season, what's kind of the record, maybe what he's targeting, what Oklahoma is targeting this year? That would be a successful year amongst Oklahoma fans and that program that he needs to get to maybe get that hot seat a little cooler.
Well, in Oklahoma, the expectation is win them all. So there's some fans that would say if you're not in the double digits, riot in the streets. But I think considering the schedule that Oklahoma has, which is just the home away flip of what they had a year ago, which I think some people, I know I looked at it as the toughest schedule in college football, probably the toughest schedule Oklahoma ever had. So it's still a very tough schedule. But I think considering the arrival of John Mateer at quarterback, the arrival of Ben Arbuckle as the offensive coordinator, I do think, and probably after that first year in the SEC, some expectations by fans have maybe been tempered just a little bit. I think if they get 8 or 9 wins, I think that would be very good considering their non-conference schedule. While it has 3 extremely winnable games, it also has a game against Michigan, which I don't think is a gimme. Some SEC teams, their schedule is a lot of gimmies in the non-conference. So, if Oklahoma can win against Michigan in week 2, I think it sets up, probably looking at more like, high side of 8, 9 wins, probably looking like that would be a very good year for Oklahoma and would definitely take some heat off Brent Venables.
Yeah, that schedule, Jenni, as you mentioned, is no joke. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but I do want to talk to you about John Mateer. I thought that was a great pickup for Oklahoma in the offseason. And like you mentioned, bringing over the offensive coordinator that was with him at Washington State in Ben Arbuckle. What are the expectations? What's camp been like throughout the summer? How excited are people about Mateer and this Oklahoma offense coming into the year?
Yeah, obviously a lot of hype around Mateer after what he did at Washington State, especially, last year with I think it was only added to by his predecessor at Miami transferring out and having such a great season. So leave Washington State, go somewhere in the power conferences and have a great year. So I think the expectations are very high. Lots of national folks saying, he's definitely in the top 5 of college quarterbacks, which I think would be a huge, huge improvement over what Oklahoma saw a year ago out of Jackson Arnold. Just wasn't a good fit. Their offensive line was hurt a lot. Their receivers were hurt a lot, but you didn't see Jackson Arnold sort of elevating the guys around him. And that's a lot of the talk about John Mateer, is that he's a guy who elevates other guys. So if he can do that, if he can make Jaden Ott at running back, Javonte Barnes at running back, these receivers, Deion Burks, lots of young guys, lots of transfers in that receiver group. If he can make those guys better, I think they've got a great chance to have an improved offense, much improved offense. I don't think a one step up is probably going to be the hope. I think multiple steps up is what Oklahoma needs out of John Mateer. And, for all the national hype, last week, the OU coaches, Brent Venables, Ben Arbuckle, as well as co-defensive coordinator Todd Bates did a luncheon down in Norman to raise funds for a group down there. And they did not slow the hype train. They kept it moving forward, full speed ahead on John Mateer, talking about what he's brought already to Oklahoma. So they're very high on him. And I think that's only going to go up if he continues, not only in camp, but then those first few weeks out of the gate. If he performs well, I think that hype train will hit warp speed for sure.
You mentioned that wide receiver room, Jenni. I mean, Oklahoma was just crushed by injuries last year. Their top 5 receivers were essentially hurt for just about the entire year. So they do have some guys coming back. They hit the portal really hard to bring in some new faces. Give us like a name or two at the wide receiver position that you think could be a big factor in this offense this year.
Yeah, I mentioned Deion Burks before, and he was obviously one of those guys who got hurt, and he is a speedster, transferred in last year from Purdue. If he can stay healthy, I think he's that guy. I think he's the go-to face of the receivers. But I know the transfers, they're expecting a lot out of those guys, but they've got a group that are now second-year receivers that when they came in, they were as highly touted as basically any receiver group in total that I've seen in a very long time coming into Oklahoma. And you just didn't see them coming to the front last year like you'd hoped when they had so many injuries to more experienced guys. So guys like Zion Carney and Ivan Carrion, guys that were really highly thought of coming out of high school, I'm really looking for them to take a step forward because, it's not enough to have one or two or three. If you've got some transfers that you're expecting to come in and produce right away, you need a bunch of guys when it comes to the air raid offense. So I think it's vastly important for those young guys that are now second year guys to really step forward and be what a lot of people thought they.
We're talking Oklahoma Sooners with Jenni Carlson here on Send It In. Give her a follow on X at Jenni Carlson _OK. On the other side of the ball, Jenni, obviously Brent Venables' calling card is defense. I think he's going to have one of the top defenses in the SEC this year. Now, they do lose the heart and soul in Danny Stutzman. Is there an area, like a position group on that defense that is maybe a concern going into the season?
It's probably the secondary. We actually got news today. Eli Bowen, who played significant amount last year as a true freshman, had dealt with some injuries in the spring, and he's still going to be missing some fall practice as well as he recovers from injury. So that's a position that, probably needs to get guys healthy, needs to develop the depth there. That's probably the area I would say is most questionable on the defense, because the defensive line, to me, even though they lost some guys, I think that they've definitely got the depth and the talent on the defensive line. Even some guys, I was talking about the receivers, those young guys coming in that maybe need to step up. A guy like David Stone came in a year ago as a consensus 5-star recruit, but didn't really have that first year. Defensive line is tough. You don't always expect true freshmen to come in and play right away, much less start, but they had a true freshman in Jaden Jackson on the defensive line who did start. So I think they're looking for that kind of step ahead by David Stone, but I think they've got pieces on the defensive line. They'll be just fine there. Obviously, you mentioned Danny Stutzman leaving, but linebacker, I think they've also got guys like Kip Lewis that have had experience and that have played really well. So to me, it's that secondary with transfers and then with, smattering of injuries. I don't think the Eli Bowen injury is a lingering type of thing. I suspect it's more, hey, he knows how to do this. Let's give him a chance to get fully healthy before the games start. So as long as they don't have any sort of lingering issues that way, I think they'll be in good shape. But to me, that defensive secondary is the one area when you look at it, you just want to see, who's the next Billy Bowman? Like where are those guys in that secondary and who's going to step up?
You mentioned how tough the schedule is, Jenni, and it really is one of the toughest schedules, again, in the SEC. Is there a game that you think is like the most important on the schedule, like would be the biggest win for Brent Venables? Week 2, that Michigan game could kind of maybe get some momentum for that program heading into SEC play. Of course, Red River. They have games at Bama, at Tennessee against Josh Heupel, former Oklahoma quarterback. Like, what's the game on your schedule that you think is the biggest one for Oklahoma coming into the year?
Yeah, I think there's so much that you want to see early that to me, Michigan is huge. Now, obviously, Michigan's coming off a year that wasn't good by their standards either. So they're looking to make a statement. So I think that could be big. But to me, obviously, it's always big because of the rivalry, because of those types of things. But last year, everybody saw just how inept Oklahoma's offense was. They really struggled in that game against Texas. And that's a Texas team that obviously went extremely far in the postseason, as good as they come nationally. So I think that's one of those, measuring stick games. How far along? Obviously, it's not the same Texas team. It's not the same Oklahoma team. But I think for Oklahoma to get a gauge of just where they are, I mean, is that a must win? I don't know. I think anytime you're in Brent Venables' seat, beating Texas is always a good idea. So he would probably say, yeah, it's a must win. They need to go to the state fairgrounds of Texas and win that game. But I think that as much as anything, that will give us a better sense, where is Oklahoma? Is their defense about the same as it was a year ago? Is it better? Their offense had better be better, but how much has it improved? I think that's going to be a really big measuring stick game for Oklahoma.
Jenny, we'll leave you with this. What do you think is the record for Oklahoma at the end of the year? Right now at BetMGM, the win total 7.5 for the Sooners, so they see about 7-8 wins for them. What's your prediction for the year?
Yeah, I think 8-4 is what I'm going to go with. I just think with this tough schedule and really, I mean, still some question marks. You want to see, what does Ben Arbuckle's offense look like? How does John Mateer approach week in, week out SEC competition? I think he's going to be really, really good, but you just don't know. And that offensive line, we really haven't spent much time talking about him, but in the post-COVID years, Bill Bedenbaugh, who's been very good at cranking out offensive linemen who are NFL ready year after year after year, they have not been good since 2021. So they need to take a serious step forward on the offensive line. And I think until we see just how much they've improved, I'm going with 8-4 coming out of the regular season. And I think that could still mean that Oklahoma takes a serious step forward. But just how tough this schedule is, 8 wins to me seems like a good, comfortable spot.
I like it. It's going to be a big season for Brent Venables and company, no doubt. Jenni Carlson, give her a follow on X at Jenni Carlson_OK. Sports columnist at theoklahoman.com. Jenny, always appreciate the time. Thanks so much. Have a great season. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks, PJ. Appreciate you guys.
You got it. All right, great stuff there from Jenni Carlson as we continue to talk Oklahoma Sooners here on Send It In. And again, you guys, that schedule, right? I mean, as tough as we're probably going to see here when previewing all those SEC games, they do have the non-conference game against Michigan in week 2 at home. I like them a lot in that game, but then home games against Auburn. You do have Red River against Texas, which is considered a road game for Oklahoma. So that's going to be a big key this year, is the Sooners are only going to have 3 true road games in the SEC. They do have to play at Temple on the road, but obviously the fact that this year the Texas game counts as a road game for Oklahoma, that's a big deal. They only have to go on the road 3 times in SEC play. Now they do have to play at South Carolina, at Tennessee, and at Bama, and they're probably going to be underdogs in all 3 of those games. But I think it's fair that they could win 1, maybe 2 of those road games. And then the home games again, Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss are all going to be, and Missouri are all going to be in Norman. So it's a tough schedule, but the fact that they do get Texas as a road game, even though that's played at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, that's a big benefit for Oklahoma. The fact they're going to get Michigan at home, you're going to have Bryce Underwood as a true freshman making his first career start in prime time in Norman against that Sooners defense. And I think Oklahoma's probably got the better coaching staff. So I think that's an advantage for Oklahoma in that game. Again, the win total is 7.5 for the Sooners, and it's plus 120 on BetMGM. I like the over. I think 8-4 for Oklahoma is absolutely doable. The Michigan game is going to be super key, but I do really feel good about them winning that game. If they win that game, all really Oklahoma has to do is win one of those 3 difficult road games, right? Beat either South Carolina, Tennessee, or Bama on the road. That's 2 losses right there. And then just split the home games that you have. Split Texas, split Ole Miss, split Auburn, and LSU. If they're able to win 2 of those 4 games and then lose 2 of those road games, then you're at 8-4. Maybe they could go 9-3. But this is a massive year for Brent Venables. He's been in Norman for 4 years. He had a 10-3 season a couple years ago. Their final year in the Big 12. Weren't good last year in SEC play, but they did have a number of injuries. Again, their top 5 wide receivers were all out. They had no returning offensive linemen from the previous year, and Jackson Arnold was just a disaster at quarterback. So now you bring in John Mateer, who did a lot of really good things at Wazoo. You bring in his offensive coordinator that he had last year at Washington State in Ben Arbuckle. Jay Knott comes over from Cal, the running back who I'm a big fan of. Their wide receiver core should be much improved. And this defense, that's Venables' calling card. They're going to be good on that side of the ball as well. So I like Oklahoma. I like their win total over 7.5 at plus 120. And I think if this team wins 9 or 10 games, if you are feeling high on Oklahoma, I think John Mateer is worth a bet to win the Heisman Trophy at 25-1. I think the upside is that high because Oklahoma, you know what you're going to get from them defensively. But if they're going to upset some of these teams and win 9 or 10 games in the SEC, rather than betting them to win the SEC or make the SEC championship game, I'd rather just probably bet John Mateer to win the Heisman Trophy at 25-1. So I think he could be a good look in that market, but I do like Oklahoma over 7.5 wins at plus 120.